Welcome to the CFI Member Spotlight series on FinPod by CFI, where we highlight the inspiring career journeys of CFI community members. Let's get started with today's conversation.
Welcome back to another CFI Member Spotlight. I am so excited to be here today with CFI member, FMVA designation holder, and CFA, Genaro Arredondo.
Hi, Anna. Thanks for having me on. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, so nice to talk to you again. I'm so excited to just dig into your career. You are Director of Corporate Development, M&A at Equifax, based in Atlanta today, I think. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's a little bit hot here today.
I feel like that's the theme of the summer, right? It's hot everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk a little bit too about your journey, to Atlanta. But, I always like to start this podcast with a little bit about your origin story. Did you always know that you wanted to go into a finance role? And what did you study in school?
Yeah, definitely. So, that's a great question. But to be honest with you, not really. Like initially, I didn't know what I wanted to study at college, but my dad was an accountant. So I guess that had, some influence on me. So answering your question directly, no, finance was not something that came like very natural to me when I decided with, what career to pursue. But after some back and forth, I decided to explore a career in finance. But I would say that my interest really came with my first role when I joined the professional world. That's kind of like how I decided, that finance was something like I wanted to get into.
Yeah. So what was that first role out of school?
Yeah, so I have a major in accounting, call it like CPA equivalent. Then I pursued a master in finance and an MBA. And as you mentioned at the beginning, later on I completed my CFA charter, which was like a long, challenging, but very fulfilling journey. And to be honest with you, Anna, I never stopped studying. For example, as you mentioned as well, I recently completed my FMVA with the CFI, which was an amazing experience. So that's kind of like my educational background.
Yeah. You just always struck me as you're such a lifelong learner, and just to get your master's, your undergrad in accounting, and then get your master's in finance, and then continue to push on. I definitely want to touch on that today. So you did study this, and then what was your first role when you first, we got your undergrad degree before you got your master's? Did you have a role before you got your master's?
Yes, I did. Actually, this is a very interesting question because as you can tell by my accent, I'm not originally from the US. I'm originally from Chile, South America. So over there is something very common when you finish school, or even, which was my case, even when you are still in your last year of college, you can complete your studies, like on evenings. So you can join, a big four firm like Deloitte or Price Waterhouse while you are finishing your school. So that's what I did. So in my case, I joined EY, Ernst & Young at that time, as an audit analyst, and I stayed there for around, 2 years. So as part of the audit team, I was assigned to work at, one of the largest clients of the firm. So it was there when I had the opportunity to get closer to finance because I was tasked to, review the portfolio of derivative instruments of that client, meaning like forward swaps, valuation and the accounting side of those things. So that's when I became like fascinated, and I fell in love with finance and I wanted to learn more and eventually become an expert on it.
So you got to have that role while you were still finishing up your undergrad.
Yes.
And which I'm sure was challenging, but what was a day in the life like at EY the first year or two as an analyst? Like what were you working on? I'm almost curious too, how much did they train you versus like throw you in as well? So just tell us a little bit about those couple of years.
Yeah, well, that's another fantastic question. So at the beginning, I had to work like very, very long hours. So maybe, I don't know, 14, 15 hours per day. Rarely it was less than that. And, another funny thing that I'm still seeing the consequences of is like I ate a lot of pizza. But, what I would say, like, despite of working very hard, those hours, even though they were long, they were filled with like tons of learning opportunities, teamwork, collaboration, and discipline. So I would say that having gone through that, those experiences are the ones that have framed the kind of professional that I'm right now. And one of the things that those firms do very well is what you exactly said. Like training was kind of like the value added. And I went through like several like very, very strict training programs when it came to like financials and accounting. Like at that time, I remember that the big deal at the time was like the adoption of IFRS in Chile. So I had the opportunity to get certified in IFRS thanks to the training program that EY had in place.
Yeah, fantastic. So, and were you primarily working not in English at that time because right? Yeah,
that's true.
We're definitely going to talk about that. Yeah,
yes, that's true. Like I started my career back in Chile, my country. So for the most part, everything was in Spanish. So that's right.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about just then coming here and just getting thrown in to full-time English, likely or to some degree. So, what did you do after EY?
Yeah, that's another great question. So thanks, Anna, for asking that, because so I stayed at EY for about 2 years in total in the audit team. So after those 2 years, I got an offer to join Deloitte's M&A practice again in Latin America. So I started. It was there when I started getting more and more familiar with valuation models, deal structuring, due diligence, purchase price adjustments, and things related to M&A. So that was kind of like the second step in my professional journey, was like jumping from EY audit to Deloitte M&A.
Yeah. And at what point in that did you decide to go get your master's? And I'm curious too, like why did you do that? Were you always just thinking, I'm a lifelong learner, I want to continue? Or was there something, a point that you said, I want to go do this, this is important?
Yeah, actually, as soon as I finished my undergrad, I started immediately doing my, like my graduate education. Like as soon as I faced, like the professional world, I immediately realized that I wanted to be like a long, term learner. And it was kind of like very easy for me to decide that finance was kind of like my path, just because, as I said, my professional experience was like doing those reviews about, financial instrument derivatives and things like that. And I became fascinated with it. So it was something like very natural and something that I wanted to do immediately. So that's why I did.
Got it. Okay. So what, obviously accounting, audit, so different than M&A. What did you learn in those first couple of years that helped you make that transition to M&A? Because I'm sure there was a lot new that you had to learn and it was quite different. But what do you think in those first 2 years that you got working for, a big four in audit that helped you in your next role?
Yeah, definitely. So outside of the technical piece, I would say that my first role at EY was critical to set me up for my second job. Mostly because, as I said before, one of the things that I learned early on was that having, intellectual curiosity and willingness to learn, can open up too many doors for you. So what I'm trying to say is that you will face like a lot of challenges on a daily basis. But as long as you have the right attitude and you are eager to learn new things, you can overcome anything. So, that was something like extremely valuable that I learned from my professional experience at EY. And that was kind of like super, helpful for my second, for the second stage at Deloitte and M&A.
I love that you said that because it seems to be both in talking to our members and also in another podcast that we do, Careers in Finance, which is very similar. It's a theme that many people, especially early on, but throughout their career, get to these moments where maybe they don't feel qualified, or maybe they feel like it's a big leap, but when they stay curious and they break through that moment. I just was talking to somebody yesterday and she was saying she went from working at a regional bank and now she's at a very large VC firm. And we were talking about her career path. And she said there was this one job that she was interviewing for, and she didn't know half the terms that they were saying, but she still, and it's just like to be, and she broke through that moment and, ended up getting the job. But you have to stay curious and you have to stay open and you have to continue to not let those moments block you, but let those moments propel you to learn and educate yourself.
I fully agree with that. Yes. And that's something that I always practice my entire life. I've never I've never set kind of limits and let, challenges to set me apart. It's been like the other way around. I always taking on new challenges, and I, take opportunities that I've been offered to move forward with my career.
Yeah. Well, I know we didn't talk about this, but since we're on this topic, you've done lecturing and you've worked with students in university. What do you see as the difference? What advice would you give to somebody? Is it from a lecturer, an instructor point of view, to help people really see and turn that light bulb on for themselves?
Yeah, something that I will advise, people in general, not only from the academic standpoint, but also from the professional standpoint, is always in something that it has worked out for me. It's always invest in your future. As I said before, I never stopped educating myself. At some point, it was the Master in Finance or the MBA or the CFA or the FMVA, all of those things that I've done. But my recommendation is use education to help you to the best version of yourself. In a professional world. Then the second thing that I would say is been critical for me, both professionally and academically, is get a mentor early on and throughout your career. I've had so many great people that have helped me to guide my career and even make those decisions in terms of what do I want to do next. And those people are the ones who have helped me to achieve great things. So that's something that I would definitely recommend, mentorship as a tool that will make a difference to your professional path, if you will.
That's such a great advice. And I think a lot of people don't know how to find a mentor, what that means. And one of the things I say, I don't have great advice about that other than stay in touch with the people in your life that impact you. And those things tend to develop, and I think if I could go back to when I was, in my 20s, I wish there's so many people that impacted me so positively that I lost touch with professionally. And I wish I hadn't. So I think it's just, you treasure the network that you create, right?
Definitely. And that's such a great point, because even though those people who helped me, early in my career, I still have relationships with them. Even people that are still back in Chile, I still talk to them. I still, seek their advice, and I'm always engaged in conversations with them, not only career-wise, but also personal-wise, because they became my friends after a little bit. But that's something that is really, really important in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking back of Chile, after you left Deloitte, you went back to EY, right?
Yes, but I went back to EY to do basically M&A as well, because my boss at Deloitte, joined EY to start the M&A practice. So I joined him, to start getting clients and implementing our M&A practice in Chile, but now at EY. It was such a great experience as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. So when there's no better companies to cut your teeth on than EY and Deloitte, right?
Yes.
But then you made a transition to what really is an FP&A role for a while, right? Before you got to jump back into corp dev. And corp dev is such a dream role for so many people. So I can't wait to talk about your role today. But
definitely,
tell us then about leaving, big firms to jump into working in an organization in an FP&A role. That started in Chile, but I think it's what brought you here to the U.S. as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was another great story, what I would say. So when I was working in M&A, we had the opportunity to advise US company in their first acquisition in Latin America. So after they completed that acquisition successfully, uh, I guess I did a good job there because they invited me. They invited me to join their team as FP&A manager leader, and trying to help with the integration of that new acquisition from a financial standpoint. So as I mentioned before, I've never said no to any new opportunities, and even though FP&A was not something that I was really familiar with, I decided to, accept that opportunity and go to work to that company, help them with the integration. And, after a couple of years, they gave me a promotion to, take a global role in FP&A. So I became a senior manager for a global FP&A for the same company, but now at the corporate headquarters here in the US. And that was like such an amazing and great experience. It's something that I was looking actively at some point to, like, as part of my career growth, to move to the US. That was kind of a dream for me. But all of this happened, thanks to my, journey and my professional career.
Yeah, each step leads to the next one, right? Opens
Absolutely.
the next door. So what was it like for you? I think that you are fluent in 3 languages, right? Spanish, English, and what's your third?
A little bit of Portuguese.
Okay. So what was it like switching? We talked about this a little bit, switching from working primarily in Spanish to, I'm imagining, almost, primarily all in English. How was that transition like for you?
Well, it was difficult because, I'm going to start by saying that in my particular and personal case, having different languages has been tremendously impactful. And for me, it was kind of like a game changer because, it opened up so many doors and opportunities. And that's why I'm here right now. So in my opinion, speaking languages is a critical skill in today's world, but it's still also like a huge differentiating factor for professionals. So initially, it allowed me to work both at Deloitte and EY to work on cross-border projects, also interacting with a wide range of different professionals. And as I said before, ultimately it allowed me to move to the US, which is something that, I was kind of like dreaming of. But to be 100% honest with you, Anna, I can tell you, like, based on my personal experience, it's never late to learn a new language if you are passionate about it. Why I'm saying that? Because, I don't know, this could sound surprising for some people, but before 2016 and or 15, I don't remember the exact date, but I didn't speak any English before that. So before that, I only had like a very, very, very basic knowledge. Actually, maybe it was less than basic. But after a little while, I realized that English and other languages was such a great differentiator. So I came to the realization that it was critical skill for me if I wanted to keep progressing my career further. So basically, I made that decision. I took action. I made an action plan, and here I am now. So for those who are listening now, I would say, like, if language is something that you want to learn, just go for it. It's not going to be easy because it's also like a cultural learning opportunity. It's not only like speaking, it's also understanding the culture. But again, if you are passionate about it, it's definitely something that you can learn.
Yeah, incredible. I'm so glad that you shared that because if you think about it, it's only 8 years. I mean, that's just, 2016. It's just not that long ago. And I love how you frame it, making an action plan and taking action, which is really what it's all about, right?
Absolutely.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So, great experience. Well, tell me actually first, because before we jump into where you're at now, what was different and the same about being inside of an organization? So not being, servicing a client, but now you are the client in a way, right? You are inside an organization and you're doing a role that's really, probably different in FP&A. How was that? How did what you had done in your past help you? But then also, I'm sure it was quite different.
It was quite different because it was one more like finance related as a financial advisor before. Everything was like external and more high level. So now, after that, I was responsible for, like giving our management team the information that they needed. So it was quite different. It was a transition that it was not that easy, but it was like very helpful at the same time. So I use all of the things that I learned both at EY and Ernst& Young from a technical standpoint, but also, like communication was critical because now I was not only like visiting a client and asking for some questions and preparing a deck for them. In this case, I had to learn how to solve real life problems that the company was facing, and it was like critical for the organization to surpass. So I had to learn how to deal with those problems and make recommendations that could benefit the company in the long term. So what I'm trying to say here is like my life before was like a specific projects, and it was like for a short period of time, while here I had to be part of the solution and try to drive results in the long term.
Yeah.
So both are interesting and valuable from a professional standpoint, but are quite different.
So different, right? I think sometimes people, when they go from consulting, where they're used to like giving advice, giving perspective, to now inside of an organization, you are an owner of something. And like, for not just for a short time for a project, but you're an owner of this thing ongoing. And some people, there's so much to draw on because you get exposed to so much in, working in a consulting firm. But then I think sometimes people have that challenge of like, truly, like, I'm not just passing this on or giving advice, like I own it.
Absolutely. I fully agree. Yes.
Yeah. So then now I want to talk a little bit about your current role. You are back in M&A, well, Corp Dev, right? It goes back to your roots at Equifax. So what's this role like? Tell me about that.
Yes. Well, currently, as you mentioned at the beginning, I work as a director of corporate development at Equifax. So for those who don't know, Equifax is known as one of the largest credit bureaus globally, but it's also a leading company or player in the data and analytics space. So our company right now has presence in 24 countries, and it serves, like customers across different sectors, being financial institutions and fintechs, the most relevant ones. So basically, trying to making it very simple, my role consists of executing Equifax's global mergers and acquisition strategy, which means, we deploy capital to acquire businesses or companies, both in the US, but also in other geographies. Actually, we acquired a company in Brazil in 2023, the second largest credit bureau down there. So ultimately, our mandate is drive growth, profitability, and ultimately, create or add value to our shareholders. So in my personal case here, I'm lucky enough because M&A is a strategic priority or initiative for Equifax. Actually, my boss reports directly to the CEO, so he's a C-suite person. But that's also like super like important because we have deployed around $4 billion, across 14 acquisitions over the last 3 or 4 years. So that tells you that how critical M&A is for our company because it's a lever of growth for our company.
Yeah. How fun. You must be enjoying it so much. What is one of your favorite things about this role, but in this moment too for Equifax, where this is such a strategic, important priority?
Yeah, definitely. So there are too many things, to be honest with you, that I love about my role. But if I have to say just a few, I would say, the first one is having the opportunity to work and learn from very smart and talented people. So that's probably what is like number one for me. I mean, I'm sure that, there are smart people everywhere, but my experience here as Equifax is, just great having opportunity to interact with those like extremely smart and hardworking people. Second, I would say that feeling intellectually challenged all the time, and find ways to solve problems is something that really motivates me and something that I love too as well. And third, what I would say that in my particular role, something that I really enjoy and I really love, and it's not always easy, is the diversity of knowledge that exists in M&A, and that's just fascinating to me. What I mean by that is like you have to basically learn about your own business first, then, trying to understand about the business that you are trying to acquire. You also have to learn about like technical matters like finance, accounting, taxes, legal, in my case, like technology, data. So there are too many complexities around M&A that make, that function or that area definitely unique and fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think that your work, then, being a consultant and then being in a company, you get those two different perspectives, right? So you're looking at these things through that operator's lens, not just through that, outsider lens. I think I would imagine it helps you understand what's going on in the businesses better, be able to assess and just even, just to kind of get your arms around things. I'm sure both of those viewpoints really help.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. What a fun place that you're at right now. What an incredible career journey that you've had. And a lot of inspiring words here today. I've got two more questions for you before we wrap up.
Absolutely.
One question is, when and why did you get your FMVA? You had, your master's, you had your undergrad, you had so much professional experience. What led you to decide to do that?
That's an amazing question because, like, as you mentioned before, even though I've been like very careful in terms of like progressing in terms of my education, I was looking for something that helped me to kind of like combine all of the theory with the practice. And like I've loved the things that I've done in the past, like the MBA, the Master in Finance, and the CFA. But at some point, I felt that I needed something that could help me to combine, all of that theory with how to put things in practice. So that's when and this going back to what we discussed, that's when I was like talking to one of my mentors back in Chile. Actually, he's now in Europe. And he told me I have the perfect program for you. And I said, well, tell me what it is, because that's what I'm looking for. And he told me, you have to consider doing the FMVA because it's such a great program that combines, again, the theory and the practice. And I was trying, to like get up to speed again with M&A, evaluation, and all of those things that I did at some point. But, after being 5 years in FP&A, you kind of like forget a little bit or get a little bit rusty. So that's why I decided to, do the FMVA, and I don't regret it. It was such an amazing program, and it delivered, like everything that I was looking for and even more. So I completed my FMVA last December, and it was like an amazing and fascinating experience from a technical standpoint, but also, having the opportunity to learn new things as well.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I love to hear that people found it to be, valuable and fulfilling for them. And more than anything, we want people to have confidence and feel like I sit down and I know exactly, what I'm doing. And so I think that a lot of times it is that, bridging from the theoretical or the knowledge to the practice, fingers on the keyboard kind of moments for us as professionals. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And, so, what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about their career path and says, like, I'm really interested in that? What advice would you give them?
Yep, I will. Well, that's another great question. And I don't think, honestly, that there is like a recipe for success. And at least I don't have it. But I can share, what has helped me to progress my own career and be, like successful and be where I was dreaming to be at. So as I said before, one, always invest in your future. Like education is such a great tool for, professionals to like keep progressing and in learning through their professional journey, right? Second, again, try to get a mentor. That's kind of like super important to me. Like mentorship is such a great tool to make a difference. From the technical side, which is also like very important, I don't want to sound like too soft either, because like from the technical side, which is quite important, I would suggest keep strengthening your financial skills, like understanding financial statements, how they interact between them, how to build a DCF, discounted cash flow from scratch, understand, the economics, the ins and outs of like discounting rates, like weighted average cost of capital, things like that, definitely make a difference in M&A. M&A is so heavily impacted by financials that I would say that that's definitely something that you should, pay attention to. And lastly, and this is like maybe a more soft recommendation, if you will, but it's something that I try to put in practice as well on a daily basis, is be humble, keep a positive attitude, ask for help when you need to. Don't assume that you know everything that, can drive you to make wrong assumptions and potentially make the wrong decision. So again, have a positive attitude and ask questions. That's kind of like my little piece of advice.
I love that. And to ask questions, you mentioned earlier being curious. And I think that just feeds into that. It's so important, right? And be humble. I love that. But I'm really glad that you called out the technical skills, because a lot of times when I ask in these podcasts, I get great answers, but very rarely do I get that. And that's foundational, right? You can't have the technical skills.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
Good. Well, Genaro, thank you for sharing your journey. It's so inspiring. It's inspiring, and you've got a lot of words of wisdom for people, just in terms of being a lifelong learning and investing yourself and taking, prioritizing yourself in your learning journey and your professional journey. So I'm really grateful to have you on the podcast, and thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Anna, and the CFI team. So thanks for the opportunity. I really enjoy it, and I'm here to help and share my experience to those who are looking for guidance. So happy to help. I hope we can do it again, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. FinPod is brought to you by Corporate Finance Institute, the #1 rated online provider of finance and banking training, certifications, and productivity tools.